Hello and welcome to this episode of Filmi Ladies. Today we're being scary ladies because we're going to talk about the very popular Malayalam movie Manichitrathazhu, which was made in 1992 with Shobana and Mohanlal and Suresh Gopi. It was directed by Fazil. And then we're also going to talk about one of its many remakes, which is the Hindi Bhool Bhulaiyaa that came out in 2007. Vidya Balan played Shobana's role, Akshay Kumar played Mohanlal's role, and Shaini Ahuja played Suresh Gopi's role. And this one was directed by Priyadarshan. There's also a Kannada remake, a Tamil remake called Chandramukhi starring Rajni, which I've heard is god awful. There's also a Bengali remake, which is also supposed to be terrible.
Did I watch part of it? Yes, I did. I will report back later.
Oh my God. The only remake that seems to be like good is the Hindi one. I have not dared to see any of the others, especially the Tamil, because it sounds hideous, frankly. But anyway, today we're going to talk about Manichitrathazhu and Bhool Bhulaiyaa. Now, I've gone on record multiple times as saying that I despise remakes. And what is interesting is that Beth had seen Manichitrathazhu but not Bhool Bhulaiyaa, and I had seen Bhool Bhulaiyaa but not Manichitrathazhu. And I also think that being the biased creatures that humans are, I think sometimes the order in which you see a movie also influences how much you like it. So I'm kind of curious to see if Beth and I land on the same page in
Hmm.
terms of which one we prefer or don't. So I'm curious to see how she feels about it. So Beth, tell me, you had seen Manichitrathazhu a long time ago, and you just watched Bhool Bhulaiyaa,
Right, right.
okay? And then how would you rate either of those films?
This is so complicated. I have so many notes in front of me. I don't know what to say first. So I think I'll start with something that I just need to get off my chest, which is
Okay.
I don't understand why the original was such a big deal.
Okay.
I'm not saying I think it's bad. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm saying I don't get it. And that could be because I think I have seen maybe 4 Malayalam films. So I don't know this world at all. We should have gotten someone on this episode who knows with
It's
these
the
films.
only Malayalam film I've ever seen, by the way. So you've seen three more than me.
Right. So we are very ignorant about the setting of this, the context from which this film came and which in which it was first seen. But even just kind of reading around about it, it seems like it showed on TV a lot and ratings were
Yeah.
always high for it and things like that. So I genuinely don't understand why this film is so well received. It is now 30 years old. And as we were saying, talking about our discussion of Bobby recently, we can't unsee the things we've seen that have happened since then. So like maybe sometimes older things just don't land at all or the same way. So I'm very willing to just say that. But I was genuinely what I'm about to say, I genuinely mean this. What is the difference between this and some of the Ramsey brothers films? And is
Ugh.
it that the woman who is, spoiler alert, again, some complications of like, is this scientific, is this spiritual, like I'm going to use the word possessed even though that's not what they say in the film, but like who has the mental illness that manifests as possession or whatever. Is the difference that she's like kind of foreign returned and well educated? Like, is that the difference? Because honestly, there's so much about this that feels Ramsey Brothers-ish to me, and that is a compliment coming from me, but those films are
Right.
not held in the same way that this one is. Is it
Right.
a Hindi versus Malayalam? Like I know there's a snobbery around Malayalam films, at least in the fan community. I feel sometimes like they are like, oh, they're automatically like, you know, artier and better. The way some people talk about certain eras of Bengali movies, right? Like these are kind of held up in a different way than mainstream Hindi is, for example. So yeah, I do actually like the Hindi remake better, even though I saw it second. And I will also say the following statement, which maybe renders me shallow, although the director is on record as talking about it too. Budget.
Right.
The Hindi one just looks so much better. The Malayalam one looks a little bit like, I mean, honestly, like by today's standards, with what everyone can do with video with their phone, like a high school kid shot it in a lot of ways. There are beautiful things in it, but it is not visually pleasing to me most of the time. Whereas the Hindi one is kind of dripping in visual beauty. At
Hmm.
least that works very well for me because I like Rajasthani palaces and stuff like that. So
Right.
um, I also feel that there's a shift somewhere in the 15 years between these two films and sort of acting styles and things like that, as well as perhaps regional differences. And the sort of the broad comedy doesn't work for me in either, but I just feel like it's just there's a little more polish and stuff going on in the Hindi one that for me works better. Now, I will also add here, maybe the Bengali remake is only a few years older than the Hindi remake. So there's all these remakes of this film, but there's 10 years between the film coming out and then all these remakes happening, which is interesting. And I'd love to know why.
Yeah. I think the Kannada one was 2004, and then
Yeah,
the Tamil and Bengali were 2005, and then the Hindi was 2007. So it's like
right.
between 1992 and 2005, were people just not aware of this movie? Why
I
did suddenly, randomly, in
yeah.
like the mid 90s, bunch of people made? I have no idea.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting too, that there's a pause and then all of them happen at once. The Bengali one is also made on what looks like the change we found in our couch cushions. It is terrible. And I like Prasenjit. He plays the, the doctor role, because of course he
Mm.
does. And it's not good. I forget who the woman is playing the main women's role. She's not good. And I watched the big scene of her being like fully in the
Right.
historical character and bringing the sword down, and on it, like, I could film this thing. It's terrible. It's like someone's living room. It's so bad. um so that was kind of disappointing, although I suppose not too
The
surprising.
Tamil one, I literally read a description of it because it has Rajni. Immediately, I was like, this is going to be terrible. And
Oh,
Rajni plays the doctor. And apparently, he has scenes where he's like on a motorbike and then he's bashing up goons. And I was like, why is that even necessary? But then it's a Rajni film, so it makes sense. And I read that Jyotika did a really horrible job. And
oh,
I saw that scene, the big scene. And they've done all sorts of like special effects to her eyes. And like it looked very, very tacky and very bad.
I so I don't know where is the place to raise this question, so I'll just raise it now. So, of the people playing the doctor in the various remakes, I think you could almost argue that Akshay Kumar is the smallest of the stars to play
Right.
that role across these
Yes.
different cinemas. So that was kind of interesting to me too. Now, I'm not saying he's a small star in 2007, he's clearly not, but he's not like these other guys. I feel like you cannot talk about those industries without those people at the
Yes.
time those movies were made, and at other times too. And the Canada star, who I actually just also saw in a Ramsey Brothers film, um, these are all like incredibly important sine qua non stars. And like
Right.
Prasenjit in this budget film in the mid 2000s is not the height of his kind of magic in Bengali cinema either, but he is the name. These other
Right.
guys are the name basically. So I feel like that's kind of interesting too, that the Hindi one has a select, still very A list, but like
Yeah.
not A
But like it's
plus
not Shah
A.
Rukh.
It's not
Right.
Shahrukh. Yeah, it's not Rithik.
Yeah. I
um
actually think Shah Rukh would be so great in that role.
there are a lot of people who would be great in these roles, and like I think it's
Right.
not a, to me this didn't come across as a particularly challenging role. The woman's lead
No.
role is more interesting and more challenging. Also, hadn't thought about Shiny Ahuja in a long time for very
I
good reason. I
know.
was like, oh yeah, yeah. And like I didn't think he was bad. He's not someone I have an opinion about because I didn't really see
Yeah.
much of his stuff before he was I don't know,
Incarcerated.
yeah. We found out what a bad man he is. So I have no feelings about him really, but I was like, oh yeah, you're better than I thought you would be. But yeah, so that's my rambling introduction into I have no attachment to the original. I think it's fine. I don't get the big deal. I actually did mean to go into the university library and try to dig out something about like what is the impact of this film. So I'm hoping people will maybe point us to some reading or something, because it's clearly got huge impact and I don't get it.
Yeah. So I definitely vastly preferred Bhool Bhulaiyaa, but that's why in my introduction I mentioned that sometimes we can be biased in favor of
Yeah.
what we saw first.
Yeah.
And I saw Bhool Bhulaiyaa a really long time ago when it came out, actually. And I had never bothered to see Manichitrathazhu, but like I have friends, like my cousin is so obsessed with this movie, and she was like, "You have to watch it," and I was like, "Okay, fine."
Hmm.
Um, and I liked it, but I vastly preferred Bhool Bhulaiyaa to it.
Hmm.
I also did not see what the big deal was with Mohanlal.
No.
And I'm not some Akshay Kumar fan, just for the record. Like, I don't particularly like him, but I just enjoyed him a lot more. I agree about the visuals and everything. Bhool Bhulaiyaa was just mounted better. The
Yeah.
only thing I thought was unnecessary was that in Bhool Bhulaiyaa, they've shown them to be some sort of like quasi royal family. And I don't think that was necessary. I think it
No.
would be more fun if it was or more believable if it was like a big mansion belonging to a nobleman rather than like a palace.
A
Not
legit
everything.
Rajasthani
Yeah.
palace. Yeah.
Like not everything has to be a
Yeah.
palace. In fact,
Yeah.
sometimes I just think that the horror element or the supernatural element or the thriller element is more interesting when
Mm,
it's just some super rich nobleman's house on a very like old fashioned prosperous street rather than like legit royalty. So that's just the one qualm I had about it. I will say though that despite being a Vidya Balan fan and despite thinking that Vidya Balan was phenomenal in Bhool Bhulaiyaa, I think Shobana was vastly better.
I
So that
agree
was
with
the
that.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Shobana, so especially that video that I sent you that I found on Reddit,
Yeah.
and I'll put the link in our comments so people can see. It's literally that big moment in which it's not the dance scene, viewers, listeners. It's the scene where she's acting like she's all like nicey nice and normal, and then her husband tells her she can't go out to like go jewelry shopping or whatever, and then you just see this shift in her, and she just her voice drops an octave, and she has these manic eyes and everything. So it's literally that scene in all five languages, that someone compiled it, and you can see how leaps and bounds ahead Shobana is even of Vidya Balan,
Yeah.
which I was like, wow. Also, the dancing. I mean, Nagavalli is supposed to be like an actual dancer. And again, not that Vidya Balan is bad. She's not bad at all. She's a really fine dancer and she's done a great job in Amije Tomar. But you see, Shobana's dancing, the woman has like what the woman has like water for muscles or joints or
Yeah.
something.
No
She's
contest.
so spectacular, but
Yeah.
again, you're pitting a very very famous dancer actress versus someone like Vidya Balan, who is an actress who does some dancing. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure it's a fair comparison. I think Vidya Balan did a great job, but except for Shobana being absolutely fantastic, I just did not enjoy Manichitrathazhu as much as I enjoyed Bhool Bhulaiyaa.
Yeah.
And I was like, am I just being biased because I just saw it? I don't know.
I
I just
feel
didn't enjoy it
like
as much.
this story is a little slow to get off the ground to me.
Yes.
And
Can we
when
talk
you
about the
watch
comedy
when you
uncles?
oh, when you watch two versions back to back, and I had like a week between my viewings, but still, the second time, I feel like it's not fair for the film you see second. It's not its fault, especially when it was the original in my case. So I had seen it a few years ago. Then I watched Bhool Bhulaiyaa a week ago or so, and then I watched it again. Can you notice I'm avoiding trying to pronounce the name of the original?
It's
Yeah.
okay.
The Malayalam one. Because when you said it out loud and I'm looking at the spelling, I was like, something interesting happens with transliteration at the end of that word in
the
the Roman alphabet.
ZH, the ZH in Malayalam, Tamil, and Marathi. I think these three languages have the R sound. So
Mm,
the ZH becomes that. So when they write Tamil, for example,
yeah,
although you say Tamil, they write
yeah,
THAMIZH. So the ZH
yeah,
is a R.
yeah.
Just say the
Um,
Malayalam film.
Malayalam film. I having to watch the comedy uncles and all the setup again was just like, oof. And and again, my ignorance is at play here because in the Hindi one, there was at least for me a small delight of recognition of, oh, there's this actor. Oh, there's like, I
Yeah.
have kind of a soft spot for Rajpal Yadav. Don't ask me why. Like, he often gets stuck with these kind of onerous comedy roles, but I kind of enjoy him
He's
in
so
them.
cute.
Yeah, I find him kind of enjoyable in limited doses, which is not his fault. It's the script and everything. But
Yes.
like the guys who were in the Malaya, I don't have any experience. I was like, I'm not getting anything off of this. I don't know a lick of the language. Obviously, with Hindi, I understand some bits. So, like that, just like subtitled comedy uncle. No, thank you. And that's not that film's fault. That is my fault. But this is my experience of it. And I didn't watch that part of the Bengali one because I'm sure that would have been onerous too, even though I do know who some of those guys are. But I was like, no thanks.
Did the Bengali one also start with, it's almost 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning of this film with these comedy
Mhm.
uncles going on and on about keys and
Yeah.
wells, and honestly all of that could have been chopped.
Yeah.
It was completely unnecessary,
Yeah.
and I was just like, is this even relevant to this movie? Like, just
And
chop, get
And
rid of
maybe
it.
it's very relevant to the tradition it comes from, right? I have no idea, neither do you. So like maybe it's like
Yeah.
this is referring to some other films or some stories or there's something about this vocabulary or watching these people together, whatever. Yeah, we just don't know. So
It's not necessary to the Hindi though.
no, it is not. I would say
So
that. Yeah. Because then
they could have just gone,
we've all
yeah.
seen, Paresh Rawal do
Yeah,
uncly
like, do
comedy
we
before.
need
So
to
like move it
see
along.
Paresh Rawal doing his things and then Asrani? I mean, I enjoy Asrani. I think he's
No,
adorable, but do we need to? It was
no.
15 to 20 minutes of the movie starts
Yeah.
like that. Like, if I was in
Yeah.
the theater, I would be annoyed at that point. So
Right.
it was just, it's like the movie really begins with this couple returning from abroad. I think in the case of Manichitrathazhu, they come from Calcutta, and I think in Bhool Bhulaiyaa, they come from the US. So
Yeah.
it's when they have returned to their native village or whatever, that's when the movie really begins. So
Yeah.
I don't know why we have to sit through 20 minutes of comedy uncles. Um,
No.
I also think that for a movie that is centered, not really centered on a dancer, but where the dance part of it is such a big element, and then, all of that is so important, the music and the dance and everything. The Malayalam one, Manichitrathazhu, just does not have particularly good music.
It didn't
And for
move
me,
me. I gather it's well regarded, right? But it doesn't do anything to me for me.
it didn't do anything for me. And not that Bulbulia has particularly good
No.
music. I mean, all the other songs are horrible. But that main song, Ami Je Tomar / Mere Dholna, the
Yeah.
way that is choreographed, the way that is sung by Shreya Ghoshal, I mean, honestly, it makes the movie for me.
Mm,
Because while I accept and agree that Shobana's performance was
sure.
better than Vidya Balan, the way that her dance was shot, both her in the here and now and her as the dancer, it was just shot so poorly that I couldn't even
Mm,
discern what was happening. And the
mm.
screen was so gray, like just the color grading and everything. It was just kind of like, it just didn't have the impact it should have had. And then when you watch Bulbulaya, my heart actually broke for Vidya Balan. Like,
Mm,
for that character, for Avni, because the music really heightens everything.
mm,
And the contrast for me between watching her like this strapped, caged, claustrophobic person with like the messed up hair and the torn sari blouse and just her puppet like movements in that dark dusty room, and you feel bad for her, but then they cut to the olden times that she's like remembering, or rather imagining, one should say, and she's radiant and beautiful. And Vidya Balan has a gorgeous, gorgeous smile. And the close ups of her, where she's just like happy. And then there's this male dancer dancing with her. And it's just shot so beautifully. And to see the contrast between her sadness and her brokenness, and then to
mm.
see happy and performing, and she's with her lover, and it's like your heart just leaps for her out of joy. And then the absolute horror of her lover being like beheaded, and then on her face, like the blood just splashes. It
Mm.
reminded me a little bit of Pony and Salman, with like
Yeah.
Aishwarya's face getting splashed. But it's like just the absolute horror, and her face just like crumpling with it. I just thought all of that was masterfully done. And I would give complete credit to the director for that, but also complete credit to Vidya Balan for doing such a great job. Cinematographer, all of them. I mean, that's what we go to the movies for, right?
Mm.
To just be like taken in by that atmosphere, and just to sort of like, I felt for her. I felt bad for her, and I wanted to have her revenge, even though I know it's completely make believe. Whereas with Manichitrathazhu, as phenomenal as Shobna was, I just kind of didn't care that much,
Yeah.
which is the worst thing you can say about a movie. You want to either really, really love a character, or, have oodles of sympathy for them, or you want to really hate them. You don't want to kind of ignore them. And yet I
Right.
was just kind of like, eh. Towards her character, I just didn't care. And I chalked that up to the direction and the cinematography.
Although also, who knows if we had, well, I did see that one first, but I don't remember it very well. But if you had seen that one first, maybe because you knew how it was going to go, right? So maybe knowing the ending did
So
in some
I
ways tamp that down.
So I actually think that given the strong, strong bias I have against remakes, I think the
Ah,
stakes were actually higher, that I would have loved Manichitra Tal more. If anything, I would have to tell myself, okay, don't be biased. Don't just like be against,
right.
because I'm so anti-remake. So for me to really genuinely prefer the Hindi over that, I
Hmm.
think is just a more entertaining movie. I did
Hmm.
also do a little bit of a deep dive on Reddit and Quora, because I was like, what am I missing? Why
Right.
is the like, am I crazy? Why am I not enjoying this Malayalam one as much? And like, except for agreeing that Shobna is awesome. And a bunch of people had actually asked that question on
Mm.
Reddit as well as Quora. And the only answer that made sense to me was a person said that the Malayalam movie is very steeped very strongly in Kerala culture.
Ah,
And that a lot of those first 15, 20 minutes of the jokes and the comedy and whatnot that you and I
mm,
basically were like, what is this?
yeah.
Is apparently very like, you have to know the language, you have to
Ah,
know the ethos. And if you don't know it, you're just not going to get it.
okay.
And I was like, okay, but I also believe that you should judge films independently on the basis of what they offer you rather than necessarily knowing all the intricacies of it. Like, do I know the intricacies of Tamil culture? I do not. I am not Tamilian. I've been to Tamil Nadu once in my life. I have no special connections to that
Yeah.
culture. And yet, Tamil movies really move me in a
Mm,
way that I adore. I love them. So I'm not sure I completely buy that explanation, but as that is the closest explanation I could find.
mhm.
But if you have Malayalam movie regular watchers or any like Kerala folks among our subscribers, I would be curious to see what they think
Yeah.
about these two movies.
Yeah.
How did you find Akshay Kumar in Bhool Bhulaiyaa?
Totally fine. Yeah, he's a person that um if I stopped to count, I've probably seen quite a few of his movies because he's obviously been
He's
acting a
very
long
prolific.
time. And he's especially recently incredibly prolific. I don't see most of those, I will say. So there's sort of his public persona, which I don't care for, and his sort of, political and whatever. But as a performer, I do tend to enjoy him. Like when I saw oh, what's the movie he did with Sarah Ali Khan where she's
Atrangire.
yeah, Adrangi
It
Ray.
also had Dhanush in it.
Yeah, I thought he was actually quite good in that, even though I found the project ick. That's not,
I
that's not
watched
the
that movie for Dhanush, and he did
yeah,
not disappoint, especially his monologue in Tamil was gorgeous, but that movie was awful.
yeah. But that, so like I don't mind Akshay Kumar most of the time. I find him very enjoyable in certain films. Special 26 is a movie I absolutely loved. I haven't rewatched it, but when I saw that in the theater, I full on loved it. And he's, keyed
I
at
have
that.
not seen it.
So he's someone I am neutral to positive about depending on the situation on screen. So
Mhm.
bringing that in, like I thought he was good in this. And that sort of, so one of the things that I think is tricky about this film and this role particularly is the swing between comedy uncle by the lead man who then drops into these other things. And in retrospect, we learned that he's kind of observing and diagnosing and things like that. And we know he's a doctor and we know why he's been brought in, but you know, when he all of these guys are saddled with this monologue about like here's how I figured this all out and like here's my assessment, which is a little too long in my
All
opinion,
the
like mansplaining
exposition.
blah blah blah. Like I feel like they could have kind of, I don't know, sprinkled that throughout a little bit more. Anyway, so you know I thought he handled the swing between those kind of aspects of that character well, as did Mohanlal. I would say I didn't watch enough of the Bengali to comment on Prasenji, but I assume he did fine because he's a super competent guy. Like, so I think that kind of uh I don't want to say bipolar exactly, but like
Yeah.
that lead man has some big swings in him, as does obviously the lead woman. Hers are much more interesting and dramatic and necessary. But so I thought he that's the challenging part of that role, in my opinion. And I thought he did fine at that because he can be very funny.
He is very funny.
And especially anything that's physical, I think he's quite good at that. But when he's tossing in all those little asides about like, there's that whole thing about like people peeing or people like, someone thinks he's someone, when he's in the shower on one side and that other woman's on
Oh,
the other side,
yeah.
like that kind of thing is not my favorite, but I thought he handled it with a nice lightness and like kind of kept it kind of moved along well enough. So yeah, I have no issue with him in this film. I thought he was totally fine.
Yeah. He actually, so my feelings about Akshay Kumar are very like time based. So if
Mm,
we're talking about Akshay Kumar from the 90s, adore him because I used to love Khiladi, Main Khiladi Tuvanadi, those like basically when he did all the action films, I
Sure.
loved him in those because he was a great action hero sort of a person. And he also did comedy really well. And I loved his comic timing in those films.
Mm,
And then he also did like Khaki, which I enjoy. Not very many people seem to have seen Khaki or talk about it, but I did
mm,
like him in Khaki as well. So the 90s Akshay Kumar, who was like the sort of stud action hero, macho person, kind of like Jackie Shroff with more acting chops sort of person. I like that Akshay Kumar. The Akshay Kumar that is now just like a money printing machine
right.
and just does movie after movie after movie after movie with zero quality control. And it just like destroys everything with his annoying as heck gummy smile. Cannot stand him. So
Mm,
I think Bhool Bhulaiyaa is at that time when he was beginning his transition
yeah.
into the annoying Akshay Kumar that I think of
Yeah.
today that we will not touch with a barge pole, but he hadn't gotten there yet. So he still had some of that charm from the 90s. There's actually one scene in Bhool Bhulaiyaa that made me laugh out loud. Like I almost spit out my tea. It's when he's really frustrated with that other like comic side plot person where he's like he's imitating the Bengali song and he goes আমি যেই তোমার chin 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 শুভ যেই তোমার chin chin chin. Like he's so irritated and he was so funny. I just like literally started laughing. So he was very good in those bits, I thought. And then Vidya Balan, of course, like bowled me over. Now I have a question for you because I
Mm,
was debating this with my husband and I'm not quite sure where I landed. So I choose to interpret these two movies as they could go either way, depending on your perspective,
mm,
and explanations could work either way, meaning
mm.
they can work as a typical supernatural horror movie where, despite whatever the doctor person says, it is actually a case of like possession and subsequent exorcism.
Okay.
I think it could totally work as that. But then I think it also could work with the scientific explanation of this is a person who is perhaps a little bit mentally disturbed. The signs were there, but they were not as obvious. And now that she's in this environment and listening to these fantastical stories, it grabs her imagination. And now she's
Yeah.
having a full blown like mental health crisis. And now somehow we're going to diagnose her and hopefully get her some treatment, right? But to me, it actually works in both ways because
Hmm.
the way that they've shown like the psychiatrist, but then they've also shown the tantric person doing the spells and everything, it's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. Like, what exactly is it? So
Yeah.
I like the fact that it can work in
Yeah.
both planes of existence in a way.
Right.
Do
Right.
you feel that way, or do you feel like
Yes.
no, this okay,
Yeah. To me, it works for both sort of ways of knowing or whatever,
right?
however you wish to interpret it. I do think that in both of the films, um, there's something a bit shoehorned about the explanation of why she is the way she is. And maybe that's just pacing and again, how they doled out the observation, the assessment, the explanation, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, and I am on record in other places as saying I don't care for it when someone's like, oh, the answer is there's a ghost.
Yeah.
Like Talash, I'm looking at you. Um, but the,
Wait, are you talking about the Talash that had Amir Khan and Rani Mukherjee?
yeah,
There's no ghost in that.
well, Karina's dead. Remember?
I don't even remember Karina's role in it, except for that one song.
Oh, you're kidding? No, she's dead the
I
whole
don't
time.
remember.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, yes. I finally
And
remember. It's that
I was,
scene at port.
yeah,
Okay, okay, got
yeah, I
it.
was so angry about that when I watched that film. So, because I think it's, I think it's cheap and simple,
Right.
or easy, the easy way out. But this, palace vibes, historical vibes, they're talking about a curse and they've set it up and whatever. So at least they've set it up all along. Whereas in like Talash,
Yeah.
there's no anything about, you
Yeah.
know, so I would accept either. I felt like it sort of covers both enough. Um, that said, it's kind of more fun to think of it as a ghost story.
Yes.
And it's also less complicated in terms of careful representation and thoughtful representation. And yes, this
Yeah.
film is the Hindi one, the original is 30 years old, the Hindi one is 15 years old. They're slightly more. So, our language around and how we talk about mental health has changed a lot in those time periods. So that's another sort of question I have about this film is like looking back at it, do we wish some of the language was different? I'm not knowledgeable enough to say, but I would suspect so. And it does feel a little bit, because they don't show you who threw the pot or whatever, right? You don't know. So the buildup of the characterization is not there because it's a reveal rather than a buildup. So that's kind of interesting. But I do feel like it's sort of rushed at the end and slow at the beginning of the like, oh, by the way, this is her mental illness condition, and this is why, and this grandmother, and she heard stories, and these things happened to her parents, which I can't remember. Is that new information when he says it in the explanation, or did we already know about her parents? I can't remember.
No,
Or
we
maybe there's
kind
a
of had a
mention
bit
of
of a
it.
flashbacky
Okay.
thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because he goes around to the. So I don't love how it's sort of doled out, but yeah, I do think it works both ways. And I don't even know which one I would prefer. I'm kind of, interestingly, I am satisfied with a sort of hybrid explanation, which I wouldn't expect to be because I'm very much on the science side of things.
Right.
So that's interesting. Yeah.
I
Interesting
think
question.
creatively, I actually always prefer it when it's more on the supernatural side because it gives you more creative liberties. So
Sure.
if you just say that if it's a possession or if it's like a curse, oh, I love
Yeah.
curses so much, or a hex of some sort,
Yeah.
you can basically do whatever
You
you
can do
want
whatever you
because
want. Yeah.
you don't have to follow any rules of physics or any of that like annoying rules getting in your way or anything. So you can just
Mm-hmm.
have a lot more fun. I
Mm-hmm.
feel the other issue is like anytime I watch movies, whether they're like Hollywood movies or Indian movies or any movies or TV shows for that matter, there's so many things that are now like debunked. For example, I think
Sure.
Akshay Kumar in Bhool Bhulaiyaa says that she suffers from like split personality, but I feel like I read like 2 or 3 years ago that that's not really accepted as like a diagnosis by psychiatrists anymore. Like that's
Interesting.
not really a thing.
Interesting.
And then I remember there was a phase. I used to lap these movies up, by the way. Like there was a phase in Hollywood in like the late 80s, I want to say, when they made a whole slew of films and even TV shows for that matter, where people had dissociative personality disorder.
Oh,
It was a thing also in TV shows like Law and Order had so
oh, I
many.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah, Law and Order was always like, well, this person did commit this crime, but they were blacked out because they have the dissociative personality disorder. I'm like, of course, should have seen that coming. She has the dissociative personality disorder. But I think that that's not really a thing anymore either. So
Yeah.
I think that's the other danger with coming up with like psychiatric reasons for people's behavior is that
Yeah.
10 years later, the DSM handbook is going to tell you that that's bullshit.
The DSM has changed.
And people, whereas with curses, Beth, there is no handbook.
No,
You
you
can do
make up
what you
whatever you
want.
want. Mhm. As
Yeah,
long as you're internally consistent, ideally, then you can do what you want.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Um, what did you think could have perhaps made Manichitrathazhu a little bit better for you? With the disclaimer, we already know that we're not native
Right.
speakers or
Right. We
understanders
don't know
of this
anything.
language. We don't know.
um, Obviously I would have wished for them a bigger budget.
Yes.
Um, because I feel like there's times when they're walking in the hallways and there's like nothing in the hallway at all, like not even a picture on the wall or something. Um, so there's kind of a visual
It's
paucity to
visually
this.
deficient. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And maybe again, if you're really engaged in the dialogue and all that you don't even notice,
Yeah.
that's fine. We can't watch it that way. And that's just how it is. I I want fewer comedy. I want less comedy uncle time. That is true of every single movie I've ever seen that has a comedy uncle. I want
100%.
less of it. Maybe there's one or two exceptions with Rajendranath, who I really like, but I want less comedy uncle time nonstop.
Just in general.
In general, um, I found this is a very specific complaint. Whenever they like, I don't know the technical terms for this. I apologize. When they add the sound in of the footsteps,
Mm.
it was so loud and so badly done. Like I want the sound to be kind of like remixed or whatever on this film. It's that kind of added to the like cheapness to me. I was like, come on now. I mean, I actually have a note about that. And maybe, okay, I feel this way about the Hindi one to a lesser extent. more Shobna. She's
Yes.
so good. Her role is so interesting. She plays it so well. More of her, please. Especially when you could keep, you wouldn't have to increase the runtime. You just cut out some comedy uncles. I just wanted more of her because I think she was so good
Yeah.
and the character is so interesting. And the character, I think you could argue, is not the lead character of the film, but she is absolutely, obviously, essential to the film and to the story. So I would just like more time spent with her. I felt like Vidya, I don't know if she actually had a bigger proportion of screen time or if I just sort of felt like she did, but that was my
I felt
feeling with
like
the
she
Hindi
did.
one. Yeah, so I just wanted more of her, the performer end of the role. So um those are my wishes, I think. But yeah, no comedy uncles ever for me, ever, anywhere. Doesn't matter the industry. No, thank you.
Yes. But I feel like that way too because I after watching Manichitrathazhu, I definitely felt like why is there not more Shobana? I want to see more
Right.
Shobana. Where is Shobana? Why is not? I mean, the woman is strikingly gorgeous. And it's not just that she's gorgeous, and this is the only ever Shobana movie I've ever seen. Actually, I've seen one like Indo-American
Oh,
indie
interesting.
sort of movie of
Mm-hmm.
hers, which is shot and set in San Francisco of all
Huh.
places. And yeah, and I think
Interesting.
she's an Indian woman living in San Francisco, and she falls in love with like her American neighbor or something. I saw her a
Huh.
really long time ago, and it was interesting. And she was like arresting. It's not even so much that she's just like aesthetically gorgeous because she is. It's her body language. That is the body language
Mm.
of a dancer. That is
Yeah.
exactly how I feel about Vijanti Mala. Like Vijanti
Mm.
Mala, even in movies like say in Sangam or whatever, and she's not dancing, she's literally walking across a meadow. Or she's in Ganga Jamuna and she's wearing like a villager's clothing and she's literally wringing out the washing and she's like hanging up the laundry or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a grace and a fluidity to these dancers which I have not an ounce of, so I'm always
Mm.
like bedazzled by them. But
Right.
it's like even the way they walk and the way they move their body, there's a grace and a fluidity that I'm just
Mm.
like I want to see more of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, just walk across the corridor, just walk, I just want to keep looking at you. And I felt like I didn't get as much Shobana as I was promised, perhaps, because given that her
And
face is everywhere on the posters, I wanted more
right.
Shobana.
And her big dance number could have been longer, I
Her
feel.
big dance number was
Like, I don't need
tiny.
it to be 12 minutes, but that was very short. And
It
again,
was
maybe
very short.
that's how certain kinds of dance numbers are in Malayalam cinema. I don't know, but like we needed, I thought, more of that, especially given that she's so good.
We
So
needed
good.
a lot of that budget to
So
be
good.
diverted
Yeah.
towards her big dance number.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy that that was recognized in Bhool Bhulaiyaa and we got that. Also, shout out to Shreya Ghoshal. The woman sounds like absolute magic. I
Mm,
loved her song in Bhool Bhulaiyaa. And also, she just won her, I believe it's her fifth national award for singing.
wow.
She just like keeps racking up awards, which she completely deserves because she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was that. Do you think you're gonna see any of the other remakes?
If someone came to me and said, "Do you want to do a watch along of the Rajni one?" I would. I would maybe try the Canada one because I think I've seen a one Canada film. I don't know anything, but I do know um that Vishnuvardhan is, a big, big deal. And I really enjoyed him in the Ramsey Brothers Hindi film I watched just after this, which was a complete coincidence, by the way. I was just looking for a Ramsey Brothers film. I was like, what's this one? I don't know about this one. And it was available. So I watched it
Which
and it
one
was
did you watch? What is it called?
Inspector Dhanush. And it was co-made in Kannada and Hindi. The Kannada one was a
Oh,
big hit, the Hindi one was not. Um,
okay.
and it was, I believe, his first Hindi film. And like to launch into Hindi when you're basically 40 years old, like I get how that would be kind of rough. I thought it was a really fun, it's basically Dawn, but kind of in reverse. I would recommend it if people, and it was on
Okay.
YouTube with subtitles. So that was super fun to watch. I really liked him in it. I thought he was really funny. Again, he brought like a nice lightness to the comedy. I bought him in all the sort of iterations. Cause again, you've got someone playing someone else and like, you know, dual role plus kind of situation where I thought he was quite good. Um, and so I would kind of be interested to see at least part of the Canada one for him because based on my extremely limited experience, I thought he was fun. The Bengali one, I mean, we know I love Bengali movies, but that looks really bad. Um, and by it looks bad. I mean, visually it's awful. And then it also does not look like it's a good film. um,
Right.
I would be very willing to be argued with about that if anyone has seen it. But I just yeah, probably no, I will not run out and watch these. But also if I did, I might give it a while before I did, because I feel a little saturated with this at this point,
Yeah.
right? Like I need to wait a year or something
Yeah.
before I saw another version of this. But I do find, whenever we have a film that has been remade a lot, especially across regional industries, I think that's fascinating. So again, like the Chori Chori, it happened one night, that exists all over the place. The fact Devdas, which I don't like, but like again, clearly it is impactful in a lot of ways, regions across time, like all these things. So there's something interesting about that. And again, like I said, I would love to read more about why this film had the impact it did, and then why the lag, and then the sudden burst of remakes. And is it just a sort of a technical issue, like someone didn't want to give the rights away, or someone was forceful enough to stop it from being made, regardless of how
Possibly.
rights were treated or whatever. I'm also kind of interested to hear from people who have more experience with Priyadarshan than I do, because I have, again, only seen his Hindi films basically, and not that many of those. I'm interested in what he brought from his work on the original into the Hindi one. I read an interview, or I read an article in which he's quoted as talking about, like, the Hindi one gave me a much bigger budget to do more with.
Yeah.
So
But
those are all interesting questions.
I mean, I clearly don't know anything at all about the Malayalam film industry, but I'm a little bit puzzled. Like, what is this budget problem? Because this was a movie made in 1992, and there are big names. Like, there's the director is Fazal, there's Shobana, there's Mohanlal. If you can't scrounge up a really big budget for these names, then what kind of budgets are you operating on when you don't have big names? Like, does the whole industry just make films on like absolute shoestring budgets or something?
I don't know.
I have no idea. I
I
hope
don't
someone will
either.
enlighten us about that, because I was like, "You've got Shobana and Mohanlal, and that's your budget? What is going on here?"
I mean, my very limited experience with Bengali movies at this same time is similar. Like there's some nosedive happens. Like it's basically after Uttam Kumar dies, and also a lot of things are really switching to color. Something bad happens, and they've picked up again. But like there's just a real tank in kind of what films look like and
Mm,
sound like. Honestly, like the actual again, I apologize for my lack of technical understanding, but like there's something about the production that is really suffering. And it's not necessarily the script. And I don't think it's the actors. And I don't think it's the music often. I think there's something about the actual filming and where,
yeah.
the setting, the sets, and all those kinds of things that really are suffering. Yeah, maybe it is a question that there's just not a lot of money, or producers feel it's too risky, or, well, and one of the things that I feel I read about this film is that this was very unusual. And so maybe producers didn't want to take a gamble on it.
Wow, because to me, this story sounds like it's made for the movies. I
Right.
mean, isn't it such a fascinating story? Like, I feel like, but
Mhm.
also, I did read that Vidya Balan was not the first choice for the role of Avni slash Nagavalli. I
Right.
read that the first choice was actually our beloved Aishwarya Rai. I think she would have absolutely killed it.
I
And
think
then
she would have been
Aishwarya Rai
good. Yeah.
rejected. Yeah, she rejected it because she didn't want to play like a possessed person or whatever,
Huh.
supposedly. And
Okay.
then the role went to Rani Mukherjee, who also rejected it
She
outright.
would have
I
been
think
good too.
she would have been great too. And
Hmm.
then their third choice was Vidya Balan, who accepted it. So I'm very puzzled by that either. Also,
Hmm.
like, given how much actresses, for good reason, complain about the lack of meaty roles that they get and how they are reduced to cardboard caricatures, when you
Yeah.
actually have a role like this where you can essentially play two characters and really show your metal and really,
Hmm.
maybe even aim for like awards and stuff, why would you say no? I have no idea where Aishwarya Rai would say no to this and Rani Mukherjee would, and neither of them have shied away from taking like quote unquote risky roles. So
Right.
I'm
That's
I'm very
true.
puzzled by that too.
I wonder if there was I wonder if the idea of kind of living up to how Shobana did it was
Like
daunting to them.
intimidating,
Hmm.
possibly.
And maybe you
Huh.
wouldn't say that publicly, but that's how you
Right.
feel. I don't know.
Interesting. I also have a question, which is going to sound like a very trivial question, but it
We
kept
love those.
popping. Yeah, it kept. I know you're the only person in my life who will appreciate this question. Uh, every time Amisha Patel came on the screen, Bhool Bhulaiyaa, my
Hmm.
question was, "What does she do?"
Oh,
Like,
as in that person, what
what?
does that character do all day, you mean?
Yeah. She doesn't go to university, which is okay. You
No,
don't have to. Maybe you finish your education. She doesn't do any kind of job. She
no.
basically just like dresses up real pretty and just walks around the house and eavesdrops on people and gives directions to people. I don't really see her do anything. And she just sits around moping, being sad about the fact that she's like divorced. I think in the original Manichitrathazhu, the character is divorced yeah, divorced. But I think in Bhool Bhulaiyaa, she's like separated or something.
Well,
Anyway,
she wanted to marry Shiny Ahuja, right, as kids,
yes.
and then he goes off and yeah.
But then
Um,
I think she gets married to someone, or she can't get married because she has like a bad horoscope or something.
I think
And then
that's
she's
it.
pining for someone. And then eventually Akshay Kumar is like interested in her or whatever. But I'm like, what do you do? You are an able bodied young woman. I'm sure you could get a job. And I was like, I know Beth will appreciate my question.
That is a good question. I'm kind of surprised it came to your mind in a way, though, because I feel like there's always people in palaces not doing anything.
But I always get this question when I see people in palaces, or for that matter, Garrett's. I had this question even when we watched Lutera. I was like, girl, you were just sitting in a shawl, drinking your coffee, being all sad and
Yeah.
depressed and crying and looking at the snow. How about you do something productive with your life?
Being rich, pretty, and heartbroken is a very full-time occupation, I suspect. And if our friend Sal is listening to this episode, I feel like this question is aimed squarely at you, Miss Sal. Like, I'm sure you can answer this because I think that rich, pretty, and heartbroken is one of your favorite combinations, I would suspect. So,
Sal would be like, she is giving off good vibes and she is living,
no job,
as
just
the Gen
vibes.
Z people say, just vibes. Yes.
My new
Clearly, we're
favorite
like,
thing. Go ahead.
yes, clearly we're just like square Gen Xers who have
I
no
know.
appreciation for these kind of things. We're those
We're
kind of
bitter.
annoying people.
Like, go get yourself a job at the
We
7-Eleven
are.
or whatever. Come on.
Yeah, whatever. Go back groceries at Safeway. Girl, stop like looking all lovelorn. I
Or
have
at
no
least like
patience
be a
for
writer, be a poet or something, like do
something.
something.
Do something. Yeah, she's just so lovelorn all the time.
I will say, um, this may be a controversial or unpopular opinion. I was genuinely pleased to see Amisha Patel. I really
I
liked her
was also.
because I feel like
What is happening to us,
she,
Beth?
I don't know what, I don't really understand her career trajectory. I have never disliked her. I've never particularly like been like, oh yay, an Amisha Patel movie.
Yeah.
I gather that she sort of seems to be a joke now, um,
Yes, it's
more
very
than 20
sad.
years after she debuted, right? But I really enjoyed her in this. I thought she brought again a nice sort of quietness and a lightness of touch that was
Yes.
really appropriate. I thought she did a nice job at this sort of like feeling sorry for herself, but not in a way that made me be like, girl, get over it. I was just like, I feel for you. Like that's,
Yeah.
you know. So I thought she did a really nice job.
She provided like an interesting like energy contrast to Vidya
Yes.
Balan, because Vidya
Yes.
Balan is always so like solid and earthy and substantial in like a really
Mm-hmm.
good way. Like
And
she's very like,
energetic and
yeah, she's
yeah,
like
yeah,
there. And then
yeah.
Amisha Patel has this like sort of like sprightly vibe about her.
Right.
So I kind of
Yeah.
enjoyed even their interactions with each other, I thought.
And I thought
But
that the movie does a good job at setting that character in both versions up to like, oh, that's going to be the, the possessed or reincarnated or whatever person. But of course, she's not.
yes. I did one of my favorite Amisha Patel movies. Again, like you, I tend to be like neutral to positive about
Mm-hmm.
her. It's not like I'm some big fan or anything, but I actually thought she was hysterical in Honeymoon Travels Private Limited.
Yes.
Have you seen that? She was
Yeah.
really cute in it.
Yep.
She wore pink all the time. She had those like
Yeah.
fuzzy pants, and she was just. I think she has very good comic timing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think perhaps when she was like the next big thing. Remember, she won the Best Debutante award over Kareena Kapoor. If she had like
Mm.
capitalized on that and maybe done some like comic roles, I think she would have maybe done well in her career. But actually, I thought she was adorable in Honeymoon
Yeah.
Travels Private Limited.
Yeah.
And also, I want to say shout out to Sunny Deol, because Sunny Deol, I'm a fan, is known for being very loyal to his friends in the industry. And
Ah,
I know a lot of people appreciated that he cast her again in Gadar too.
yeah.
She's like in her late 40s at this point, and I love that he recast her as Sakina so many years later, when I think she could very easily have been like, psh, get out of here kind of a thing. So I appreciate
Yeah.
him for that. It's sad that we have to appreciate
I
people
mean,
for
that's a
doing this. It's like the bare
baseline, right?
minimum. Yeah. But given how
Here
bad
we
it
are.
is,
Yeah.
here we are appreciating people for doing things like this. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any closing thoughts on Manichitrathazhu slash Bhool Bhulaiyaa
I
slash its
was just
several
looking at
remakes?
all my notes. I feel like I got through the things that were kind of most crunching in my head as I watched them. But I do look forward to kind of doing some reading about this. And if anyone wants to point us to anything or sound off in the comments, I hope they will. Especially if you are gung ho about the Malayalam original, especially if you are not a Malayalam speaker, and maybe you can
Mhm.
kind of talk about how it works for you, because clearly it didn't quite the same for us. And again, I do want to reiterate, I don't think it's bad. I don't get, if no one had told me this was a major hyped beloved film, I would have been like, what an interesting film. But then when you get this fan baggage, and this happens to me with other films too, where I don't mean to be contrary. It's not like, well, I'm not going to like it because other people do like it. I mean, I'm occasionally like that, but that's not my general approach. Um, sometimes just the fact that there's a fan culture out there and you've heard great things about something, and then you're like, hey, it can be a lot for a project to overcome, and that's not the project's fault in any way. But yeah, I look forward to learning this because it's clearly a thing. And I do think that this is a film, should anyone wish to continue to make remakes of this, you easily could. There's nothing time specific about this. That said, I don't need another Kartik Aaryan one. I saw
Oh my
Bhool
God.
Bhulaiyaa 2 before I saw the first one. That film does not need to exist. It is a fun vehicle for Taboo, but there's lots of things that are fun vehicles for Taboo. So I don't need any more
It
of
was
him.
so bad. Karthik Aryan was so bad. And that dance he did was a travesty. It is an absolute travesty and it should never even have been filmed. And I remember watching Bhool Bhulaiyaa too. It was bullshit. And I was very angry on Tabu's behalf because of all the de-aging that they did. They did all this like
Yeah.
VFX on her and smoothed her face to the point where I couldn't even see her expressions. And I'm like,
Mm,
we do not need you to do this.
no.
Tabu is perfection the way she is. We're perfectly happy with seeing women in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s or whatever,
Well, we
wrinkles
are.
and all. Well, we are, but
We are.
also it's Tabu. They did,
Yeah.
like, she just did Kufia, and she did A Suitable Boy. She does these movies where they don't like de-age
Yeah.
or whatever. And then Karina did Johnny John recently. So I don't understand. Like, Bulbul 2 didn't come out that long ago.
No.
Who is making these decisions where they think that the phenomenalness of Tabu needs to be like DH? Don't do that. Don't use the
Yeah.
magic eraser on the Tabu. I did not appreciate that. I was very offended on her behalf. She probably doesn't give a shit. She's like, listen, I showed up, I did my scenes, I killed it, I took my paycheck, I went home.
Yeah.
You can be outraged on my behalf, but
She's
I was outraged
disgruntled
on
all the
her
way to the
behalf.
bank, hopefully.
Yeah. She doesn't care. We care.
Right.
No, it was very bad. So people need to stop like doing this. But it was, I do want to make one little point though. I know that we
Mm.
talk about budget, but I do want to say that it is very, very possible to have a shoestring budget and still make a movie that
Yes. Thank
is
you for saying that.
very,
Yes.
yes, that is very appealing. And I don't think that the lack of a budget should be used as an excuse for a movie not being as appealing. Of course, it
Yeah.
makes things harder when you
Yeah.
don't have like pocketfuls of cash, but it's not. One of the best examples I can think of is when we did our Paheli and Duvida episode.
Sure.
Duvida
Yeah.
clearly shot on an absolute shoestring, cash in the cushions kind of way, and it still holds up and it's still a
Yeah.
magnificent movie to
That's
watch.
a really great comparison, because that film too has sort of a sparseness to it, especially compared with Paheli, but even on
Oh
its
yeah,
own, like there's sort of a sparseness to it and it's super effective, whereas this
yes,
is less so.
yes.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not gonna use low budgets as an excuse.
Good point.
But okay, all right. Well,
I have one more question,
yes, go.
which is for you and for any listeners. What are your Indian film spooky season must sees? I on Twitter the other day actually put out a call for favorite Indian horror films other than Bulbul and Tumbad, because like I know about those. So I was compiling a list for a friend who loves horror films but has not seen any Indian movies. And so I can put that list in the comments if people are interested. But it's not the biggest genre, obviously, within any of the Indian regional cinemas. So it's not the hugest list, but um I would be very interested on what are people's favorites that they return to, especially if you watch it more than once. So if like knowing what happens or whatever is not, that does not detract from your enjoyment. It does not detract from my enjoyment ever, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Um,
any spooky must watches.
I mean, I would say my favorite would definitely be Tumbad. Great, great, great. But absolutely terrifying. I did like
Yeah.
Bulbul very much, but it was
Mhm.
also a little bit traumatic.
Mhm.
There's an Anushka Sharma movie called Pari, which I thought was
Sure.
decent.
Yeah.
That was good. And then there's a funny, like there's a comedy horror movie that Anushka Sharma did that's called Filori. I
Uh-huh.
chanced upon it.
Yeah.
Very few people have heard of it, leave alone seen it, but I thought it was really cute. I
I've
thought she was
seen
very
that.
cute as this, yeah, as this kind of like snappy ghost, and her love story with Diljit Dosanjh was really cute. I
But it
really
has
love.
that has the like the gut punch of what happened to her, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
yes,
that if you haven't seen it and you don't know the story, just know that like at the end you're going to get a bit of a like, oh,
yeah.
but it is good. I agree. That's a very good
It's
movie.
good.
Mhm.
I love Lakin. I just love Lakin so much
Yeah.
for how haunting it is. It's not so much of like a
It's
horror,
not
but it's just,
scary. Yeah.
it's not scary at all, but it's just so haunting and poetic,
And
I think.
that film plus Hungry Stones, that those two bring there's some similarities between those and this film as well. And
Yes.
because we had talked about those recently, I think for me, these two that we're talking about today do suffer by comparison to
Yes.
those, because I think those are better. They're very different in a lot of ways, but
Because
especially
I
Laken and the Malayalam original, like those two feel kind of similar to me. And I think that for me, Laken works better.
Yeah, I think what is missing. So I think that people, when they make horror movies, it's just straight up horror. It's one of the reasons I don't particularly enjoy Ramsay Brothers movies
Sure.
myself, because they're very one note. The best horror for me is the movies where you're giving me the jump scares and it's like scary and whatnot, but there's also an emotional core to it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes Lakin so sad. The
Sure.
idea that this young girl has been imprisoned literally in the dungeons,
Yeah.
and she can't leave because this
Yeah.
person promised to help her cross the desert. Shout out to Grumpy Camel, who did
Grumpy
not do his
Camel.
job. So there's this just so sad. And I
Yeah.
think that's what Bhool Bhulaiyaa also had, where it just made me feel so sad for the character of Nagavalli. If you want to watch fun horror, which does not have any emotional core, whatever, it's just fun, 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 I would recommend 100 Days. Have you seen 100 Days?
I have seen 100 Days. Yeah,
It's
that is a
so
fun
much
one.
fun. I love that skeleton jump scare scene. I've
Yeah,
seen 100
it's
Days so
great.
many times. For some reason, they would show it a lot on Z Cinema when I lived in India. Like it was a very popular movie to show on Z Cinema. And even though I'd seen it so many times, the scene where they like the wall opens and then the skeleton comes out, which is actually Moon Moon Saint's skeleton. When
Yeah.
that skeleton falls out, I always would like jump up and scream and like delight.
I definitely
Um,
jumped when I saw it. Yeah.
yeah, that's a fun horror movie.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to have a good time and they don't want to like cry, like watching Lakin or whatever, then 100 Days is a good one to watch as
I
well.
feel like we're entering a bit of a phase where Jackie Schroff is haunting our podcast. Like we've moved on from Raj Kapoor and Devanand, and now we're in Jackie Schroff, which is kind of funny because
I
like
do not mind.
him as an
I would rather be
omnipresent.
haunted by Jackie Shroff than Devanand any day.
Oh, not me. Not me. Me and Chip are
Really?
there. Yeah. Yeah. But I also am just going to remind you that at the beginning of this episode, I don't even remember who you were comparing, but you said like Jackie Schroff, but a better actor, which I now want on a t-shirt.
Oh, I was comparing to Akshay Kumar. Like I
Right.
was saying
Right.
Akshay Kumar during his macho
Right.
tight jeans and like shirts that were like
The Kilati
buttonless,
days. Yep.
unbuttoned onto the belly button and like the mullet.
Yeah.
That's Jackie Shroff in a nutshell. Except he wasn't. So he was a Akshay Kumar in the 90s was a better actor than Jackie Shroff has ever been. However, Jackie Shroff has always been way hotter than the Kilati will
Ooh.
ever be, including today.
Huh.
So
Yeah, that is
acting
not my opinion
hotness.
whatsoever, but that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, Jackie
Is it
Schroff
the
is another
is
of
it
those
the
people.
facial hair, Beth? Is it the
I don't
facial, the
love the
mustache?
mustache. There's just I don't get it. I don't dislike him. I enjoy him in films perfectly fine. He's one of those people I'm like, how did you become a superstar? I
Because he's
genuinely don't
gorgeous.
understand. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I know we were talking about this one day where I was like, but Beth. And before I could even complete my sentence, you said, yes, yes, I've seen the Synthol ads.
Right.
You
Right.
like read my mind because that was like my reverse Uno card where it's gonna be like, ah, Beth, have you seen the Synthol ads where he's shirtless with the stallion on the beach? And you were like, yes, I have. Please shut up.
I don't remember. I don't know which of those ads came first, but I'm like, Vinod Khanna also did those ads, and like,
Also great, also
no contest.
wonderful.
Not that you have to choose. You do not have to choose, as Pitu is demonstrating. But yeah, sometimes people, you're just like, I missed it and I can't retroactively go back and get it. Or some people you can retroact. Like obviously I did not grow up with Shashi Kapoor, but that totally
Yes.
works for me. So I don't know. But yeah, Jackie is one of those people that I genuinely don't get it.
We should do an episode where we talk about the stuff that we just don't get. We
Yeah.
just don't get. And
Yeah.
we're waiting for our viewers slash listeners to convince us. We have opened up our minds. We're willing to open
Trying.
our
Yeah.
horizons, and
Yeah.
we're trying very hard. Give us a reason to hook us. So we should do an episode like that.
That would be fun. That'd be fun.
Do you remember I once was like, it was like at 3 a.m. or something, and I sent you a black and white photo of Manoj Kumar in the rain. And I said, I find him attractive. What is happening to me, Beth? And then you replied to me in the morning and you were like, I also find him attractive. What is going on? We were temporarily haunted by Nagavali is what was happening.
Yeah. And he wasn't actually saying anything about Izzat or Bharat or whatever. He was just a still
It was
picture.
just a photo, so it worked for us. He had the
Mm-hmm.
rain in his eyes, and he looked like a very grumpy, scraggly cat, like the cat from Breakfast at Tiffany's, where it's so angry about being
Aw.
out in the rain. He was like that, but not as cute, but a little hot. So very confusing for us. Okay, well, I think that's it for this episode. So, you guys let us know what you think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And please tell us about any good Shobana movies that we should be
Oh yeah.
watching. I do want to explore more of this like amazing Leith gazelle like creature. I want to see more stuff that has her in it. So, please tell us in the comments, and then tell us if you have seen Manichitrathazhu and Bhool Bhulaiyaa or any of his numerous remakes.
Mm-hmm.
And then before we sign off, Beth, should we do our best Nagavali and Suresh Gopi
Yes.
expressions?
Yes. She told me I had to make a scary face. I'm like, I don't think I can pull that off, but I can maybe be afraid.
Yes. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.